All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coalition M Radio. I'm your host, Carson Lopez. God, so you couldn't even hear what I said. My first name is Carson, in case you missed that. Tonight is kind of a big night. I have with me 4 different people. All of us are taking up the maximum amount of headsets tonight. For a good reason, though. So, first, I'm going to say the quote of the night. And then I'm going to get us talking a little bit about why this night is so special, why I have 4 other people here with me, and why you're definitely going to want to listen in. So the quote of the night is, it's by making these other values, community, connection, self-expression, honesty, more important than my own gratification, that my happiness and fulfillment happen naturally as a side effect. That's a quote by Mark Manson, one of my favorite bloggers and authors. I think it pertains really well to our topic tonight because what we're doing right now is trying to connect with each other, communicate honestly, and express ourselves openly. So the people that I have with me are all separate individuals with nuanced beliefs. I don't think any one of us is on any extreme side of things, but we are here to discuss our differences and hash things out. With that being said, nobody here is an expert, and I would like to reiterate that's exactly how I wanted it. Some people that I asked to join me tonight were a little nervous because they didn't want to say something wrong or sound stupid. And I said, this show is about students, and students are learners, and students are imperfect, but that's what makes our minds so unique. We don't know everything, and that's why we're all here. So I'm going to let each one of my guests formally introduce him or herself. So go ahead, guys, say whatever you like about yourselves, your major, passion, whatever you want. Who's starting?
All right. Hey guys, my name's AJ Ladner. You've probably heard me with Derek from The Take. I'm a general studies with a concentration in biology major as well as a Spanish major. I really enjoy music, and I'm really passionate about the LGBTQ community because that is a community I find myself in.
Hello, my name is Haiti Reyes, and I am a junior. I'm actually really passionate about women empowerment, and my major is actually organizational leadership with a minor in Spanish and a certificate in women and gender studies.
My name is Danny Ibarra. I'm a graduating senior studying music. I will be attending Wichita State University next fall to get my master's in music. I was, as of today, I'm no longer the president of the Gay Shade Alliance, but for the past 2 years I have been. And I've also been a resident assistant for 3 years, and also very passionate about women's rights and people's rights and human rights.
Well, I'm Stephanie Amesquita. I'm an RA in McMidas Hall. I'm also a sophomore. I am double majoring in communications and advertisement as well as graphic design and a minor in Spanish. I'm also a very big advocate for women's rights, just about, everyone's rights. I want everyone to, be equal. But yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to say, before we get into things, thank you again to Danny and AJ and Haiti and Stephanie for joining me. Thank you for reaching out and sitting down with me and all of us. This is going to be pretty easy, I think, because we're all friends and we all know each other. We work together, and so nobody has to come into this or walk away from this thinking that they were judged too harshly, hopefully. So tonight we're going to be discussing a most recent issue that's come to my attention within the last couple of months, and that, even though it's been around for quite some time, and that is the topic of LatinX. For those of you who don't really know what LatinX is, we will explain, not to worry, and we're going to talk about it and what it means. I know that a couple of us in here take issue with it, and others in here think it's a great idea, and the rest of us are pretty neutral on the subject. The broader subject, I will note, though, is definitely about gender, and particularly those who do not conform to the social norms of gender. So some of these questions may be a little difficult to get through because they're kind of loaded, and I want everyone to get a chance to talk, but I think we can do it. So like I said, we're each pretty unique people, And that's why I invited these specific guests, because I believe each one of them is intelligent and open enough to give us this opportunity to learn from each other. Jaren, if you're listening, then yes, I do mean that you are not unique enough for me to invite on at this time.
Called out.
Sorry, not sorry, buddy. He's not listening anymore. He's turned it off. So let's get started. I'm going to start with some general questions just to warm up a little bit, especially since I know that not everyone who listens to Coalition M knows the same things that I know or that you all know. So some of these questions may get a little sensitive. There are a variety of them I'm about to ask, but I want everyone here to know that it's perfectly okay to just be as open and as honest as possible. And if we get frustrated with each other, that's also okay, because we shall work through it. So here we go. I'm going to start with some gender questions. So, and anybody can talk. It is not for just one person or just me. Anybody. Just say what you want. So what does gender binary mean?
All right,
They're
so
playing nose goes.
I'll answer this one. So gender binary is the way I describe it. Is this concept that our society has lived with for quite some time, where everything is very blue and pink, boy, girl, masculine, feminine, and those two things do not intersect. You know, guys are guys and girls are girls.
Mm.
And that's the most basic way you describe the binary. And the way I believe is that binary should not exist. And gender's more of a spectrum, but yeah.
I concur. Yeah, I mean, you basically covered most of it.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything to add to that? I know that I was learning about this in my social psych class just last week. Most of the people in the room didn't know what gender binary was, and even the people who had heard of it weren't really sure what defines it. And so, which was odd for me to hear, because the way I thought that most people knew by now what it was, but I was wrong.
Well, I think gender is something that's talked about, and it's something that
Right.
like we live and experience, but we don't ever actually like address it verbally. Like, you know, we assign colors and clothing and like objects to gender, and then we just blindly accept that for what it is, even though that might not be the case.
Yeah, like there's a men's section and a women's section in stores, but it's just like, oh, I'm gonna go to these clothes because they look good, or you know, like, okay, this is my section, so I need to be here.
Right, and I feel like it's harder to think about that whenever you do conform to the gender binary almost, and you're not actually like experiencing like the spectrum of things.
Haiti, can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by
Yeah.
people who do conform to the
Right.
gender binary?
So there's a lot of people out there that do think like, if I'm a guy, then I'm gonna go to the men's section, and that's the end of it. If I see myself as female, as a woman, then I'm just going to go to the women's section. So whenever you're not thinking about gender as a spectrum, like Danny was talking about it earlier, it's kind of hard, or like it's easy to oversee, or like, yeah, to oversee like gender binary, because it's just what's normal to you.
I think it's a lot more like broader too. Like I agree with kind of what you're saying. Just like I identify as a cis male, like on a spectrum view, if you're looking at it, but I still conform to like my gender. 'Cause
Right.
It's like, you know, I don't hesitate about going to the men's section. I like the color blue.
Exactly.
I like cars. You know, it's just like, but it's just like all these things that are assigned to masculine or boy, like just happen to be the things that I align with, but or
Yeah.
that I want. So it's just like, but I think it's something that people just don't talk about. And you know, if I wanted to go wear a skirt and heels tomorrow, like I should be able to, but
Right, but because you do like the blue and, you know, the masculinity that comes with being a guy,
which is
it's
because of the binary.
exactly,
Mhm.
yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier.
So I think maybe we already touched on this a little bit already. What is gender nonconformity, and what all identities does that term entail?
All right, my turn. So basically, anything that is gender non-conforming is anything that doesn't go with a binary. So if you're a guy but you want to wear a skirt, that would be gender non-conforming because you are not following the quote-unquote rules or I guess social constructs of what it means to be a guy or what it means to be a girl. And that's why it's more of a, and that's why we define gender as a spectrum, because there's gender's fluid. Like, you could be the ultra manly man but like the color pink, or you could be extremely feminine but you think that camo is the best face paint in the world. And so so giving room like, we call it a spectrum because everyone is their own individual, and so they can fall anywhere on that spectrum. So yeah, I guess going back, gender nonconforming is anything that's not binary.
So this may seem like I don't want to say stupid question, because I know that everyone in here knows the difference. But for those who don't know, what is the difference between someone who is transgender and somebody who does drag?
Okay, me again.
It's okay, guys. You don't have to let AJ. It's okay. I know you all know the answer to this question. It's okay.
I got this.
Okay, AJ, you got it.
So, the difference between being transgender or performing in drag is that you do not need to be transgender to perform in drag. Drag is essentially an art form where, in, I guess, really simple terms, people dress up as the opposite of the gender. So like, men will dress up as drag queens and become uber feminine, or females will dress up as males and become drag kings. And sometimes drag queens are transgender, sometimes drag kings are transgender, and sometimes they're not. So it's more of a art form that expresses an extreme form of the opposite gender that you are trying to express.
I just state it as drag is just you're up on stage exaggerating a gender, like whether it's yours or someone else's or in between or whatever you want it to be.
Yep.
But then being trans is just you don't identify with how you were assigned at birth.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not for a show.
No, and it's your
Yeah.
it's your
Right.
identity. It's not something that you're necessarily going to put on makeup and perform on a stage for.
Right.
Or
And
get paid for.
I took a human sexuality class last semester, and I learned that most men, at least, who do drag are usually straight males who are not transgender. And so that was interesting. And it's the same thing for, I know people get transvestite. That's another thing. People get confused with transgender or someone who does drag. Transvestite is somebody who finds dressing like the opposite sex to be sexually arousing. They do not wear it in public. They don't do drag as a show or for entertainment, and they're not transgender. They just like to dress as the opposite sex because it's a turn on. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, because people used to think that somebody they used to think that a man who dressed like a woman, especially prostitutes, were transvestites, and that has weirdly nothing to do with who they are. It's more like a fetish type of thing. And of course we all know that there are plenty of fetishes out there, and that's just one of them. So did we explain what transgender is?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
So it's somebody who, right, what Danny said, it's somebody who somebody who feels internally.
How they identify.
Right. How they identify is not the same as their anatomy, their biology, which is their sex. So why is visibility of these separate communities, as in transgender and gender nonconforming, why is visibility for those communities important? What does society need to know about these people, and why is it important that they know that?
Well, I think right now they're just being swept under the rug. Like, they're not being talked about at all. And I think we're entering an era, like, in our generation especially, and like I'm sure it's going to explode with the next generation, where we're not just going to sit there and just like, twiddle our thumbs. Like, we're a lot more open about how we feel, and we're not afraid to speak our minds, which could be a bit better for worse. But I think it's really important to address the issues these groups are facing, because I mean, they're people. Like, for people who don't identify as trans or gender nonconforming, like I'll take myself for an example. I'm cisgender. Like, I've never in my life had to think about what bathroom I'm going into. And bring up the bathroom issues. It's a great topic, but it's like just simple issues like that, where it's like, where can someone pee? Like, that should not be an issue people have to fight for.
Right.
And so I think it's just like, and then there's other issues with just like when you look at medicine and healthcare, it's like getting trans people like the right types of hormones they need or the medications they need, and it can even be as simple as just like talking about pronouns and talking to someone in the pronouns that they want, that they identify with, and not how you identify them as. So I think it's just like humanizing these groups that just don't really have a voice right now.
Danny definitely hit the nail right on the head, because that's what I was going to talk about. It might be extreme at points, but there's definitely those people that don't see these communities as human beings that deserve to have the same rights as you and I and everybody else. So I think that's why it's important to shine light on their issues and what the battles are that they're fighting, so that, hopefully that'll create awareness, and then others will try to take a stand and voice their concerns in order to help them.
And especially with like groups who are going against all of these rights, or for lack of better words, creating these battles for these communities. It's more of being able to humanize these people rather than demonize, or just act out of fear rather than actually trying to find the information about these communities, and talking with people about, like, okay, what are your needs, and why do you have these needs, etc., etc., etc.
So Stephanie,
Yeah.
you have not spoken yet.
So
Okay,
cute.
well, thank you. I actually was not speaking because, okay, so I've heard the term gender, non-conforming, gender binary, gender fluid, but I never really knew the actual meaning to them. For the longest time, I thought they were the same thing. And so really I was just waiting for the explanation so that I could be like, okay, I got this now. Because one of the videos that I saw about LatinX, someone who supported it said that they were a gender non-conforming trans person. And that to me just didn't fit. Like, I didn't understand how someone can be gender non-conforming and transgender, because I was like, well, you're trying to be a gender, or you are a gen. What am I trying to say now?
No,
sorry.
you're on the
I
right
understand.
track.
I understand.
So and I was like, but you don't want to have a gender. Like, you want to be gender fluid. I was like, I don't understand how that can be in the same person. But right now that you guys are explaining it, I kind of see it a bit more. So I was just sitting back and letting them take.
Well, no, yeah, and that's fine.
Just so that I could understand a little bit
Gender
more.
non-conforming doesn't necessarily mean you were agender or genderless. It just means that the genders that you identify with doesn't have a name. It's not named male or female. There could be a third or fourth or fifth or 100th gender that exists to that person, and so. And it can be really confusing when you're gender non-conforming transgender. It's I don't identify with the gender I was assigned at birth, but I also don't identify with the blue or pink that our binary is, So it's...
Yeah, and oftentimes trans is seen as more of an umbrella term, and it's just more encompassing of everything that doesn't follow the binary.
Okay.
So I think that's really important that she brought up that she didn't know what these things mean, because that's most people.
If only more people said what she
Right.
just said.
Right. That's most people. That's, and fortunately, Stephanie's one of those people who will ask and does want to know and is open to understanding these kinds of things. And we'll get more into the nuances of identities and things like that. But I just want to say that I think that's Stephanie's point of view is still really important, because most of us are coming from a point. Danny and AJ and Haiti and I are coming from a point of understanding most of these things. And Stephanie is coming from a different point of view, because she does understand a lot of these things. She was not, I don't want to say socialized to know these things, but this wasn't a social community of hers. And that's okay. it's just that's the whole point of visibility is reaching those communities that aren't normally aware of these kinds of things. And so that's why I really wanted Stephanie to talk, because I know that she doesn't know these things, and that's okay that she doesn't know these things. But now we're all learning these things, and it's okay to say, I don't know. What does that mean? To somebody who does know, or somebody who identifies as that kind of thing. So thank you, Stephanie,
You're welcome.
for being ignorant.
I wouldn't go that far.
Ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It
Yeah.
means you don't know something.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We're all ignorant of something. It's
Yeah.
all right.
I don't take ignorant as an offense. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, it's not an offensive term. It just
Yeah.
means to not know something. Is what is the bare definition of ignorant. So, and Danny touched on this next question a little bit when he said he doesn't think femininity and masculinity should exist, or the gender binaries are what those are. So I want to ask, just for clarification, for you guys, is there such a thing as feminine and masculine, and does it matter if these things are social constructs?
So I would, I guess, just start off the bat and say yes. Masculine and feminine do exist because we use them as descriptors of different items, clothing, behaviors. I would going so far as body types.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the second part of that question?
Does it? Well, you can go slow if you want. There were definitely two parts to that question. So, is there such a thing as feminine and masculine? And does it matter if these things are social constructs? So, like, if you want to say yes, they are definitely social constructs, and most social psychologists will say yes, does that matter?
I would absolutely say yes. Yes, they exist, and yes, they are social constructs, and yes, it matters, because oftentimes, essentially, society as a whole, we depend on social constructs as, I guess, unwritten rules of how we behave and how we interact with other people, and essentially, by socializing, because humans are a social species, we delegate our behavior, and so having masculine and feminine, I guess, behaviors or identities, maybe not necessarily going that far, but as being passed down through socializing, it matters, because how do we, I guess, advocate, or how do we explain to someone that, well, I'm not a feminine woman, or I'm not a masculine guy, but I'm still a guy, or what have you.
I agree with what AJ said. And then I think the important thing to know about what am I trying to say? The important thing about gender being a social construct and the views of masculine and femininity is that, like, because they're social constructs, like, they're very fluid things and will change with the generations, and they are not set in stone. And I think right now what we're facing politically is that certain people are trying to set these things as, like, law and stuff, and, like, set these in, like, stone, and, like, this is what masculine is, this is what feminine is, and they are assigning gender to that. And so then I think that's why it's important to recognize it's a social construct, because our society has changed a lot, and is still changing and will be changing forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're saying that it's important to know it's a social construct because that means it can change.
It means it will change. Like,
yeah.
Because pink was originally boy color. I mean, it's...
Right.
And I think if you look at our society, and like women's roles in general just have flips since, even just like 50, 60 years ago. Like, and it's important to know that change is going to happen regardless of what our politics say.
As someone who is, I know most people in here are cisgender, so, including myself. As someone who identifies as cisgender, by the way, that means somebody whose gender identity matches their sex or their biology or anatomy. So as someone who is gender binary, who can not conform, well, maybe conforms and identifies with the gender binary, Stephanie and Haiti, I mean, Danny can answer too, but I just know that it's fine. I'm just saying that I'd especially like to know from them. What do you think about the fact that femininity and masculinity are social constructs. When you first learned that, was it, I don't want to say, was it kind of a shock? Did it feel a little threatening, or?
I don't want to say that it felt threatening, but I am very feminine, and I just love that about myself. And when I hear other people talking about how, like, I don't want to say like a negative connotation, but like, you, Haiti, are a girl, and the fact that you're feminine, you're like conforming, was a little bit off-putting, because I love going out, doing my makeup and hair, and just laying the game, and I'm okay with that. But when somebody is like coming to me and saying like, you're just conforming too much, like, why would that be a problem? I love, everything about I embrace my feminine, like my
Femininity.
Yeah. Words are hard. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't want to say that it was like threatening, but it really was off-putting, because some people definitely, and in every spectrum, like, can be really like take it to the extreme. So I think it's also important to be cautious about how the words that we use when we're talking about this, making it not be so off-putting or threatening to some that really embrace that, like myself.
Okay. So I am also what was it again? Cisgender. Sorry, this is a new term for me too. And sometimes I am like really girly. I love to put on makeup. Like, sometimes you'll catch me in the middle of the night where I'm just like really bored, so I'll like put on a face of makeup and then just wipe it all away. And that's just me. But I'm also the kind of person who, like, I used to sleep in like boy boxers because they were just so comfortable, and I was like, yeah, they're for boys, but they're comfortable, I'm gonna wear them. I also am really into like video games and all that kind of stuff, like shooter stuff. I really love it. And there are some times where like some of my family members as well, just because I don't know why, but I feel like a lot of like Hispanic families are really like I don't know.
Hispanic culture is very binary.
Yeah, it's very
Absolutely.
We'll get into that.
But I'll have answer just like, hey, let's just let's put the controllers away and let's go do something else. I'm like, no, I want to shoot things. Like, let me let me be me. But if I do have someone come up to me and tell me that I'm conforming too much to my femininity, like, that would also, that would be kind of offensive towards me, because I'd be like, is it really a bad thing that I do it? Like, I like what I like, and it shouldn't have to conform to anyone. Like, yeah, maybe I really like the color pink, which I kind of don't, but like, if I did, it shouldn't be anyone else's problem whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think the important part is remembering that gender binary is not the enemy here. The part where it comes in is where people try to impose gender binary things on those who do not identify as the gender binary. And so I think that sometimes that's maybe why people who are cisgender feel like, whoa, like, no, I just like this, and so what if it's a social construct? I like it, and that's just kind of a cultural thing anyway, is to like what is socialized to like for whoever you are. But I think it's still important for the people who are spreading this word and trying to reach communities to reiterate that it's okay if you're gender binary. It's just that these people are not, and they deserve to be heard as well, and they deserve to be seen, and like AJ and Danny were saying, humanized just as much as anybody else, because they are in fact still human beings. Just because you don't understand them, should have no bearing on human rights and things like that, and we'll get into that as well. So I'm going to move on to those more social questions now. How do you think the older generations are dealing with this new wave of gender expression?
It honestly, for me, it depends. It seems that for the most part, when transgender issues comes up, they're either conservative or more, I guess, baby boomer generations that are just like, no, that's not how this works. You're a guy, you're a guy, you're a girl, you're a girl. The parts you were born with, that's what you are. But they're, especially in those own generations, there's still people who are accepting and be like, okay, maybe that's not what I grew up with, but it makes sense. Like, I understand, like, either grandparents or parents who have seen their kids grow up and are like, yeah, when you were born, you hated wearing dresses, and anything that was Barbie was, it was either broken as soon as it got in the house or was lost. And so I guess while the older generations weren't socialized or taught that there's more than just guys or girls, I still think it just depends on the person and how open they are to acceptance of different things.
How have the rest of you seen how older generations are coping or choosing to respond to this new kind of... It's more political when I say that, because this gender expression has always been... I mean, I'm not saying that all of a sudden everyone's transgender. I mean that all of a sudden it's become political. And now everybody's knowing about it because it's becoming political. And that's how I think older generations can get a hold of that kind of information. But how do you guys see that happening among our parents or our grandparents? AJ did mention the baby boomers. Those would be our grandparents. How do you guys see this? How do you see them processing all of this?
Well, it's definitely a process.
Yeah, right.
Like, even this, like, speaking with because I'm obviously very, like, I fight for LGBT queer rights, and I fight for women's rights and anyone's rights, honestly, if you're human. And I know it's like speaking with my mom about it, because my little sister has a roommate who is transgender, and it took my parents a while to like get his pronouns right, or they like couldn't, if they say it right, like, oh yeah, I got it right. And it's like, you don't get a sticker for calling someone like for who they are. Like, I'm not gonna reward that. Like, it's something that they deserve, like, as a human. And just having to explain to my mom, like, if you're trans, like, you're not a boy acting like a girl. Like, you are a girl from birth. You're just assigned incorrectly. Like, your anatomy doesn't make you like your gender. Two separate things. And so I think just having those lessons, and just like, at least for me, just not getting, because my immediate response is to get aggressive and pounce when people are taking a little bit longer to learn. But just having patience, and that's something my parents have taught me so much, because they are a lot more progressive than I thought. I'll say that. I think if you give people a chance, you give them a chance to learn at their speed and not be so with the whip, like, they will usually come around. And I think when you give people the option to hate or love, most often they'll pick love. And so I think my parents definitely did that.
Yeah. So like you said, it's definitely, it takes a while.
Yeah. It's lots of
slow.
The same process. Repeating the same conversation over and over again until it sticks.
Until it sticks in, right? Right. What about you guys? What about you ladies over there in the corner?
Well, I don't really not really answer. Like, my parents, they are a little bit more on the, like, you're the gender that you were assigned and everything. But the thing is, they really don't bring it up much. And, like, when they do, I'm, like, quick to tell them, like, hey, like, it's, like, they're not, like what you said, their gender and sex are two, gosh dang it, I am not using the right terms, and I'm trying. Okay.
You're fine, Steph.
Sorry.
We know what you're saying.
I know, but I'm learning all these terms, and I'm trying to, like, use them right, but...
You were on the right track.
Okay,
we are following.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks. But basically what I was trying to say is, like, give these people a break. Like, try to, like, think about their side or something. I know when I brought Carson around to my house, my grandma was like, why is she dressed like a boy? Is she a boy? And I'm like, no, she's a female who just happens to like.
Is she a boy?
I'm like, no, she's a female who happens to like to dress in men's clothing. And I was like, and it fits her. And so my grandma was like, all right, okay. But like, she'll bring it up. Like, if she sees Carson again, she'd be like, why is she wearing that? Like, she was like so nice in her dress with like those hips that she has. I was like,
Grandma.
I'm like, yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, Carson has amazing hips. Yes, grandma. But like, it's her body. She gets to decide whatever she wants to wear. Like, so I don't know. My parents are kind of like, they'll stay quiet for a while.
You felt like resistance in any way from them or your grandmother or all of them?
I feel a little bit more resistance from my dad, just because he is more of the, like, we'll just stop talking about it kind of person. He'll just be like, okay, and then just leave it at that. Like, and then a few months comes along, and then it'll be brought up again, and he'll just try to cut off the conversation as quickly as possible. I think it just kind of makes him uncomfortable to think that way. Or
Why do you think so?
My dad really grew up in the kind of mentality of, like, the men should be, you know, strong and, like, machismo all the way. So it was all about, you know, women are delicate and small and, like, all that kind of stuff. My dad is the kind of person to tell me, like, don't depend on any man, but then later on would be like, you should find yourself a nice rich man so that you don't have to work. Like,
so I'm seeing some conflicting messages.
So some of the message are getting through to him, but then, like, a few months later, I feel like it's backtracked and, like, I have to start it all over again. So it's kind of hard with my parents. I don't know whether we're progressing, but we're getting somewhere.
You're rocking the boat.
We're definitely rocking the boat.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, and for me, I was listening to Stephanie speak, and I can relate in so many different ways. And I feel like, and I know you said we were going to talk about it later, but I feel like with older generations and the Hispanic community, it does, like, talking about these issues do make them feel uncomfortable, and oftentimes they're just like, you know what, yeah, I want to hear you out, but, like, not right now, or yeah, let's talk about it later, and then later never really comes.
It's intimidating.
It really is. But yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like conversations like this oftentimes make the older generations a little bit more uncomfortable, or they're just so unaware that they don't want to, no, we were talking about this earlier, they don't want to look or seem ignorant, and that's why they just kind of drop it and kind of turn the other way and hope that, you know, it goes away magically or something.
Yeah. What kind of message do you think is being received by the younger generations, people who are younger than us? Not necessarily college age, but maybe a little bit younger. I wouldn't say, like, well, I mean, maybe, yeah, even to little kids, you know, people who are growing up in a different kind of society that people our age and older are fashioning in a way for them. What do you think the message is?
I think it's definitely getting more exposed to them. Like, my little nephew, for example, he will watch us paint our nails and do our makeup, and he will constantly ask us for the same treatment. We go and get him pedicures and all that kind of stuff. And he just really loves it. And if anyone dare to ask him, like, why is he doing that or whatever, or, like, he shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff, he'd just be like, why? I like it. Like, it's time for me to spend with my aunts. I really enjoy doing this. So I think it's like the message is getting a bit more through to the younger generations, because it wasn't really imposed into them, like, growing up all their life thinking that they have to like cars or they have to like Barbies, as in contrast with our older generation who's, like, grown up thinking all that. Like, this is kind of new to them.
Do you think that's a new development?
I don't think it's a new development. I think it's more of, like, it's been more exposed throughout this age. Like I said, I didn't really know about gender binary or any of that kind of stuff until I got to college and I started hearing it a bit more. And then now, thanks to the LatinX thing, I now know a little bit more. But
sorry, go ahead.
I think, like, what Sophie says, like, it's like our generation and, like, the future generations are just seeing it more. I think it comes back to visibility. I think right now what's making the biggest impact on visibility is media. Because it's like our parents' generation and, like, older, like, they didn't have Facebook or Twitter or, you know, like
Tumblr.
Yeah, until they were already adults.
And so, like, they didn't have these things to like talk about these issues or to, you know, like, I think it's a lot easier for you to sit at a computer and type something than, you know, get into someone's face and, you know, talk about something. And so they not get in their face, but
yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Well, what I mean is, like, yeah, it is. You're right. It is a lot easier to see these things because of social media. But what I mean for Stephanie is, like, the way that I've been seeing it is that children usually have always wanted to kind of explore the other gender, but they were usually shut down
Mm-hmm.
before it got to that. You know, my little brothers love wearing dresses at home, and they love painting their nails and showing their friends at school, and my mom's not necessarily somebody who would either encourage or shut that down, you know. And so I think that it's a normal thing for kids to want to do that, but it's just not being as rejected now, you know what I mean? So that's what I meant by, do you think this is a new development? Because I don't think it is. I think that there is a different response to it now, but kids have always kind of wanted to explore that part, even if they don't stay over there, even if they don't end up liking, even if your nephew Christian doesn't end up liking girly things forever, they still have that curiosity. You know what I mean? Do you guys see that at all in kids?
Oh yeah, that's definitely where the social constructs come into play.
Yeah.
Just because of, you know, as a kid, you know, your world is your oyster. You have so much to explore, so much to learn, and it's not until someone tells you no, or essentially socializes you towards one way or the other, do you really, I guess, internalize that, oh, there's a difference between this and that, or why can't I wear a dress? Oh, well, it's because you're a boy, but I like wearing dresses, or, oh, why can't I get a pedicure? Because it makes my feet feel nice. Oh, well, because you're a boy, or... Exactly.
I think what AJ said is like we socialize them one way or the other. You know, the second you tell a boy he can't play with the Barbie, you tell a girl that she has to play like pretty princess. Like, you're sending a message out that like, oh, I can't be the other thing, which is why, like, you know, when trans people grow up or gender nonconforming people grow up, it's like coming out is such an issue, or it's like, you know, it becomes a lot harder for them because they're having to pick one or the other, and that spectrum is very important.
Yeah.
Did we stump you?
No. I just know that you guys ever hear that classroom rule that if you wait like 7 seconds, somebody's bound to say something else.
Right, yeah. I've heard that.
Hating us.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, it's been used on me so many times.
True.
But no. So, remember when I said that we would get into all the different identities and what that means socially for us? So my next question is, do you think that it is reasonably confusing to some people who will hear our generation, so millennials, say things like, I don't like or need labels, and then change their Facebook profile to a gender queer, sapiosexual, aromantic? That was a big thing.
Yeah, can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Yes, I will.
I'm not
Cool.
following.
Do you think that, so the people who hear, so if I said, as a millennial, I don't like or need labels, but then I call myself genderqueer, sapiosexual, aromantic, is it reasonable for somebody who is not a part of that social group to be confused by that? To hear us say, I don't like labels,
Then use a bunch
but
of
I'm genderqueer, sapiosexual, aromantic. Is it reasonable for them to be confused
Is the
by
question
that?
relating to those specific identities?
No, it's just in general.
Just
Just in
for
general.
people who like, I don't like genders, but then I identify with
Right.
like every label in the world. Okay.
Right.
Right.
I think
Is it reasonably confusing for them to be like,
Yes.
I was like, I'm confused
the
now.
idea
Yeah.
of labels,
right. I had to think about that when I wrote that down.
I think the idea of labels is very confusing, first of all, but it's a tool used to like get rid of confusion. So it's kind of you have to work back to go forward, you know, to go forwards. And I think as social beings, we like to, and as like animals, like primal beings as well, like we like to organize things so we know like what's, just so we can know like, is that a threat to me, or
Friend or
are they
foe.
friend or foe? Thank you. And so I think we also have this socialist natural like inquisition towards like, well, are they like me or are they not like me? Because it's just how social groups are formed, and you know, if someone's not like me in a negative way, I'm not gonna want them near me. And so I think, yes, people have every reason to be confused by labels because we use them in every which kind of way.
Yeah.
And I think even saying I don't identify with the label is a label in itself, you know.
Right.
Right.
It's a tool that's really, it's used a lot, but we don't know if we know how to use it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do the rest of you think?
I mean, Dana kind of hit it.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand when you identify with certain labels. Granted, it may take 18 breaths and a whole page of those labels to exactly identify who you are. It's who you are, and so that's why sometimes it takes a lot of labels to get you as an individual. And I think, especially millennials, we really are more individualistic than maybe our previous generations, and even going on into new generations. So the I don't want to label kind of comes from I want to be myself, but then it takes so many labels just to accurately portray that.
Intersection.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I can totally understand the confusion and all that. So again, with my parents who don't want to talk about it, it's okay, well, I'll give them a break and everything. It is confusing, so I understand that they need some time to think about it. I understand that this is for my parents, this is honestly a new thing to them. They don't understand the LGBTQ community, not because they're not they don't want to understand. It's more they just really do not know. And so again, yeah, I can totally see the confusion.
Right. So why not just be whatever we are? Why do we have to detail the dynamics of our attraction to others, or our sexuality, or our gender identity? Why not? Because usually what people are confused about is whether we're sapiosexual or demisexual, but whether we're a boy or a girl. And that can be kind of daunting or frustrating to answer, but it's never really anyone's business anyway, who we are, what our gender identity is, or who we fall in love with, or who we have sex with. So why do we need to say, or distinguish is a better word, whether we're sapiosexual or demisexual? By the way, does everybody know what those two mean? I know what those two mean, but does everybody? Stephanie, you don't know?
No.
Haiti doesn't know. So sapiosexual is, I'm pretty sure, when you're sexually attracted to intelligence. And demisexual, I believe it means when you can't really have sexual feelings without the emotional attachment. First, right. So you must have the emotional attachment before the sexual attraction, arousal.
Yeah.
Right. And so one is emotional, one is mental. So why do we need to say that? Why, yes, I'm attracted to intelligence, but that's not the only thing I'm attracted to, and that's how most people are, so not everyone's attracted to intelligence. But personally, I don't feel the need to say that I'm sapiosexual or demisexual, because I do like both intelligence and an emotional connection, and I do need both to be sexually attracted to somebody, and that is a unique thing. But I don't see why I would have to say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Is
I don't know if you would, you, Carson,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what I think it comes down to is there are people who are only attracted to people who are intelligent.
Okay, so
regardless of gender, they will, you can be a sexual partner as
Right.
regardless of who you are, what you look like, as long as you are intelligent. Or,
okay.
Demisexual is if it didn't matter who you were,
How attractive you are, or
if there is that
whatever.
emotional link there, then sex can happen,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's not necessarily for people who I like smart people. I like I like to have sex with people who are emotional and I have
Right.
that emotional connection with, but I can use a broader term because I identify as gay. It's I say I'm gay because
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in them being a guy first,
Mhm.
and then
So
And so I think the labels
Yeah.
are just they're a lot more specific than people make them out to be, and I think that's something that can sometimes get overlooked.
Mhm. So, Danny, so do you think that that's a lot of people who are only kind of, I don't know how else to put this, so I'm going to say monosexual. So only attracted to not what's in somebody's pants or under someone's shirt, only attracted to so sapiosexual, so intelligence. Do you think that's a lot of people who are only interested in one thing?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to say no because I'm sure, I say no, and 1,000 people raise their
Well,
hand.
it's okay. I just asked you what you
It's just
think.
like-
You can
but-
say
no, but the thing
like
is,
if you don't
like-
think so, it's okay.
Like I don't not yes, I think there are a lot of people
Yeah,
who are monosexual.
yeah.
I'll say.
Because usually that would be categorized as a fetish to only like one thing
Right.
and
Yeah.
not something else. So
But that's your identity, and that's the label you
Right.
go with it, though.
So
like,
right. So like
the way I look at it is like if you want to identify, like I have met someone who's demisexual,
mhm.
and they, and the way they explain to like I said earlier, like the way you define it, like as long as there's that emotional link is there,
Mhm.
that's their only requirement. And so if that
Yeah.
is the part of their sexual identity that means the most, why not use that label? You know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. It's kind of like
So like if you're
when you
if-
introduce someone and you say this is, if so somebody who's has a fetish for leather.
I think fetishes, I mean, to my understanding, is
Mhm.
like you need that thing to get off to finish.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think someone who's demisexual doesn't necessarily need a smart person to get off, but I think it's like they
You mean sapio?
sapiosexual
Yeah.
to get off. I think it's the sexual partner themselves has to be intelligent. you
It's
know?
for
Could-
Well, then doesn't that mean that
fetishes-
they do in fact need it to, or like they won't be attracted to the person unless they are intelligent
Not
for
necess-
sapiosexual?
I would say not necessarily because to me I consider sapiosexual, like the labels of sapiosexual, to be for a love and attraction rather than like actual sexual act, which is what I think fetishes more go to, is the sexual act of leather or of intelligence. So if they can do, you know, differential equations
Mhm.
and that gets you off, then that would be a fetish. But but if they can do differential equations, but that really, you know, that makes you attracted to them, not necessarily in the sex kind of way, then that's what I would say a sapiosexual is more of an appropriate label in that case rather than
A
to
fetish.
use fetish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because I was struggling when you were throwing both of
Yeah.
those terms around. I'm like, wait, I'm so confused now.
picked-
But
you
Yeah,
picked-
no,
you
I
picked
picked
two of the
some.
hardest
Yeah, I
ones
picked
to
so
get.
demisexual is
Right.
the heart to heart attraction,
Gotcha.
and the sapio is the is the mind, brain
Got
to
it.
brain. Yes, I know those are. I did purposefully pick those words though because they're difficult, and because this is where the confusion starts.
right.
You know, because I understand what AJ and Danny are saying, that it's different because you can fall in love with them, or you can fall in love with them. You don't need it, right? Like that's not what gets you off. It's just that the door is open
Yeah.
if it's
Yes.
there. Whereas with a fetish, so like I said, leather, it must be there for you to orgasm.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's a great word.
Right.
Okay.
And so it's just that those seem to overlap more than anything,
That's okay.
you know,
yeah.
which is okay. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I think that's where the confusion is, because
Mhm.
they overlap more than they do not overlap. And
Mhm.
because it takes these kinds of this hair splitting, you know, to properly define it, which is why I asked, why do people need to say that?
Mhm. Well, it also goes into oftentimes when we say who we're attracted to,
Mhm.
that like a lot of people have already used that to mean like that's, you know, I'm attracted to this and that's what gets me off, and so that's
Mhm.
why there's a huge overlap, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But sometimes
Yeah, I'm not saying fetishes are bad.
yeah, definitely not.
Oh, no, not. Definitely not.
Hey, I mean,
Wow.
individualism. But definitely like having the distinction of what is an attraction and what is a fetish is, I guess something that should be talked about more. Like, is one of those, like, this is the this is the line between, what you're attracted to, or like someone who
Mhm.
you can love versus someone who you can have sex with, or vice versa, or both.
So then, so when somebody says, I am sapiosexual, I'm attracted to intelligence, it must be there for me to engage in any kind of romantic and or sexual relationship with you. What is like the goal in mind of how the other person would react? So like, do people say that so that whoever they're talking to will be like, oh, well, I'm not intelligent, so you won't like me? Like, or they'll say, oh, I am intelligent, so you will like me. It's like, why is this brought up is what I'm trying to is what I'm trying to get. Does that make sense?
Is it
like,
really brought up? Like,
it is.
Yeah, like,
yes, it is brought
I
up.
think
It is
because,
brought
like,
up.
Like, as I don't identify like specifically these two labels. Like
right.
I don't know. Is
Yeah,
my answer.
that's okay, and you can say that.
But-
Say that.
But like,
yeah.
if I tell someone I'm gay and the girl's coming up trying to give me her number, I'm gonna be like, I'm gay, and if she doesn't get the hint that I don't want her number,
Right.
like, I think that would elicit a response of like, I'm telling you this
That's-
because I
right.
don't want you in my door. Like,
Right. That's definitely more. That's definitely exclusive,
Right.
though. And something like intelligence, I don't know if someone who's not intelligent is going to be like, oh,
That's not me.
you know, like that's not me, right? So what I'm
Right.
saying is, where does this even come up in conversation? Is I'm saving, because I've heard people say it.
I think it's just being able to
You know.
talk about it, and it's like if I can have
Yeah.
a conversation with you and you're like intellectually stimulating, like,
Yeah.
because like defining intelligence is like,
Uh-huh.
you know, to a 4-year-old, if you can do a multiplication problem, like that's great. But like to
Mhm.
me, it's like people who like are discovering like how to kill cancer cells. I'm like, that's really smart. I knew it was
So
me.
like, so someone who is, I'll stick with sapiosexual, since demisexual is, I feel like is a little bit harder. So someone who is sapiosexual will always can be, so let me back up. If Stephanie is intelligent and I am sapiosexual,
If I'm intelligent.
let's not presuppose.
Okay.
She's gonna break up with me after tonight. So, so Stephanie is intelligent. I am sapiosexual. I've started him. I'm sorry. We wound him up. And I am. So I will, without a doubt, be attracted to her. Is that what it means?
Okay, I want to say this right now. I don't think any of us in here identify as this, so I personally do not feel comfortable answering this question. Like,
Me
I
either.
feel like you should ask a sapiosexual these questions,
Okay.
just because like I don't want to speak on behalf of a community that I.
Don't
Don't
belong
I-
to.
That's fine. Yeah, you don't have to
So,
say anything.
that's-
Okay.
I mean,
That's just where I stand.
I would go an extra step farther, saying it depends, and
Right.
like they could, and then back to like their community, their answers.
Mhm.
But it could also be in terms of like how they want to be identified as. Like,
Mhm.
okay, you are a sapiosexual, so you're words. So you are attracted to
okay.
intelligence, and so now
Mhm.
I know. In whatever process that may be, whether it's like, okay, I'm not that intelligent, so I'm gonna, back off, or, oh, I think I'm intelligent, so we may have a chance at
Mhm.
some romantic connection, or, oh, so that's who you are, okay, well, it's nice to meet you.
It's just interesting because intelligence is relative,
Yes.
and being gay and attracted to the same sex is not. You know what I mean?
But I
Like,
think it can be because again,
how can it be?
back to our gender spectrum, like
Right, but
The-
you are attracted. So,
But
as
the-
a
but the-
gay man, you are attracted to other men,
yeah, but
gay or whatever.
But I think it comes down to also like man can be defined as so.
He's doing quotations.
Yeah, right.
No, it's okay. Just so that they know, it,
Yeah.
he means like
Man in quotation.
our
like, we
our
can-
social idea of a man.
Yeah, and so it's like we can't like. I'm sure the way I describe a guy is gonna be a lot different than the way Haiti describes a guy, different than the way AJ describes a guy. So it's just like
Mhm.
we're all gonna like. I don't think it's as subjective as like you're making it out to be. I think it's
Mhm.
more, or I don't think it's as objective as you're making it out to be. I think it's
Okay.
being gay isn't just like I'm excluding females. Like I once like talked to a trans man and we
Mhm.
like flirted on our dating app and it was like really fun and I enjoyed it and
Mhm.
and I don't think a trans man usually fits the binary definition of what a man is. So it's just like I don't think it's as objective as
It doesn't.
Well, what does it mean to be a man is similar to what does it mean to be intelligent. So, like, while
Okay.
intelligence is more varied based on what age group you're talking about or what I
Right.
guess developmental areas you're in, being a man is still objective because of the spectrum, because
Mhm.
you can be an extremely machismo manly man, or you
Mhm.
can be almost on the edge of non-binary. While you still may have the biological parts of being a man, you're just a non-binary gender. You still are, you have the biology of a man, so you could fit someone's definition of being a man because you have the biological parts. So like you have all of that spectrum of man, quotation marks, or quotation marks, in quotations, to be considered gay or to be or for a gay man to be attracted to.
So
Think.
I'm trying to I'm just processing what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure listeners are too. It's fine.
It's okay. Yeah, and that's good. So if there's no objective, let's go with males. So we're talking about males. So if there's no objective male, he can be as feminine or as masculine as he wants. That's what you're saying, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm making sure that we're on the same.
Yeah.
Why is there a need to say you're transgender?
Because we live in a binary world.
Yeah.
Okay, but if it's
so I guess
if it's relative, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know,
okay.
I'm picking up what you're putting
Okay.
down. So ideally and essentially how as a society we are moving forward, a non-binary I guess society where you don't have to be a woman, you don't have to be a man, you can be in between, you can be both, you can be one or the other, and that's okay. You can be you. But we're not there yet. And so when it becomes necessary to say that I am transgender, because I am saying as a part of my identity, I'm not female, I am male, and because our society is still based on the binary of like whether we have an M or an F on our ID cards or driver's licenses or our passports, or going into the bathroom, or other like transgender issues of where having an M or an F matters. That's why we need to have that distinction, because we still live in a society where those distinctions legally and objectively, in quotation marks, matter.
right.
Even though we don't want them to, because in all necessity they don't matter, because I'm me, but to say I'm me in certain circles, I need to make that distinction.
And I think, personally, I think that's the goal, is to not have to use labels.
Sure, yeah, but it seems like we're talking from two different worlds here, because we're saying that gender is like intelligence, and that it is, they're both relative. But then we're saying, but we live in a gender binary world where you have to kind of say which one you are if you're transgender, you know, and that's right, exactly.
I'm crashing my
He's
fist
crashing
again.
his fist, implying that there's a conflict of understanding, and that's where people get confused, because they hear things like sapiosexual, and someone, what does that mean? It means you're only attracted to intelligence. Okay, well, I'm attracted to intelligence. Am I sapiosexual? And somebody says, well, is that the only thing that you... And like we said, we can't speak for someone who is sapiosexual and what they think. But, this is where the confusion starts, is because we're saying things like, well, this is relative, but we're not in a relative world right now. You know, but we're still trying to push the relativism, which is good, I think. That we're trying to make it more up to you. What do you think?
I think until we live, I think Danny thinks, we need to just replace this whole binary with a spectrum, completely.
Yeah.
I don't think the binary should exist, because it works for those who fit in it, but for everyone else who doesn't, it sucks. And
So it shouldn't exist for even the people who identify as binary?
The spectrum still includes blue and pink. It just also includes everything in the middle, which I think is what people think spectrum. They're like, oh, it's you're eliminating the machismo man, the feminine
extremes.
woman completely.
You did say they should not exist. The binary. Didn't you say that? The binary should not exist.
That method of thinking should not exist.
Got you. Okay. So we should not think in terms of male, female.
We should not be thinking in terms of blue and pink, blue over the left and pink over here on the right. We should think of it as, I think of it like a gradient, blue eventually getting into pink, so that way you can pick, because
or your
color
fuchsias
palette,
and your sea blues,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense.
Yeah.
Hey, you and Stephanie. What do you think?
Well, yeah. No, I am learning, seriously learning so much right now that I'm just like taking it all in.
That's
because
fine,
I don't feel like I'm adequate enough to like answer these questions because I'm like, in this very moment, I am learning and I still don't feel like
AJ and I also
I can.
We know what we're talking
we
about.
we've studied and done research and read the literature.
Right, yeah, like right now I'm just like taking it all in and I'm like trying to process along with you guys. So like I don't really know what to say, but I'm learning. So this is good. Yeah.
That's okay. That's why we
Just
like
making sure you guys are
talking
still
to
with us.
people.
Totally.
we're
I'm
still
just like
here.
learning.
I also talk a lot.
And that is also good. That is good. No,
This is a
don't apologize. It's good. This is good. We need these conversations.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
educate us.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about people who do not or cannot wrap their minds around the concept of being transgender, do you think most people are coming from spite or just ignorance? So not knowing, not understanding something. And if it's just from ignorance, how do we approach them without being too
Attacking or aggressive.
condescending or defensive, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to take a stab at this one. Yeah, so I do know a lot of people that struggle with that because their mentality is like, okay, if you were born with guy parts, you're a guy. Like, don't give me that. Like, you feel like a woman when you look physically like a man. And yeah, I don't think a lot of people are, I'm sure there are some out there that are like, no, like, we're completely different. Like, we don't agree on this, so I'm just gonna like disregard how you feel or how you see yourself. I do think there's a lot of people out there that do struggle with this because they don't know. Up until a couple of years, I was one of those people. Like, in my mind, I was like, you're a guy or you're a girl. There's like, you can't be transitioning. Like, that's not how that works. But it comes from like talking to people and like, okay, like, let's sit down and please walk me through like how you feel and your thought process so that I can start to grasp and understand. And I feel like that's how a lot of people are. And I mean, it didn't happen like overnight. Like, one day I like talked to someone and like, oh wow, this makes sense now. Like, it's gradually happening still. Like, I'm still learning and I'm still slowly embracing and understanding that. I don't think people are spiteful and are like, yeah, no, just because you're different, I hate you, and I don't think that what you feel and see yourself as is right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. So you think that it comes more, for most people anyway, you think it comes more from just, I don't know.
Knowing, yeah. Just like, for me, that's what it was. It was such an abstract thought that whenever I did come across it, I was like, no, like, listen, like, either you're a dude or you're a girl, and there's not that, like, in between, or like, so yeah.
Right.
I agree with Haiti. Like, I think it's more, I think there's more ignorance than there is spite. And something I learned really early on, especially with my job as a resident assistant, is like, people don't choose to be ignorant. Like,
right.
and that's such like a profound statement. It's a simple statement, but it's just like, oh wow, like what does that mean? And I, for the last 4 years of my life, I've lived on floors with like 60 other guys, and having to talk to them like, hey, like, don't call like that person that word. Like, it's not nice. They don't like that because, you know, they are gay or they are transgender, and then you see the light bulb go off in their head. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be mean. Wow. And then they learn, and it's like great, and then they never do it again. And I think the people that are spiteful, because they exist. And this is something I always preach, is like, there's all this good stuff in the world. It's great, but all of the negative things are the things that we pay attention to. Like, I could give you, Carson, a list of 1 million reasons why you're amazing. But if I wrote one thing in the middle that was like a critical thing,
that's what that's
the one thing you would remember.
Right.
And I think that's kind of, it's like, all the spiteful people right now are gaining all this momentum in media and like in our society, and that's all we're focusing on, you know. But then there are still so many people that are fighting to educate and are fighting to learn, and, you know, are asking the questions that should be asked, but they're not getting the attention, which really sucks. Like,
because they're not being.
They're not the
firebrand
ratings
people, right? They don't get ratings. Decent people do not get airtime. Except for you guys.
Thank you.
Slick.
That was a nice one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we can jump into LatinX now. I know that Stephanie's been waiting for that.
Yes. This is something that I can actually like jump in.
Stephanie would love to talk about this.
I
Okay,
love
so for starters, what is LatinX? So what is the meaning? Who does it benefit? You can all speak, by the way. Feel free.
Okay, so like what I've learned about Latinx is that it is a term to include all people who are gender fluid, gender neutral, gender binary, agender.
Trans.
She's learned all these new terms.
Not-
She's,
not-
she's really proud, actually.
I am
She's smiling so
we
big.
talked about
I really that's true.
Clubs.
Thank you. And the reason that it was brought up is because the Spanish language is very gendered. So we have
It is gendered.
Yeah, yeah, it is gendered. It is gendered. We have like our does are like el, or I mean
La.
el la,
El,
yeah,
la.
el la, which is
Yeah.
like masculine and feminine. And so they really wanted to include gender nonconforming into this because there's like Latino and Latina. And yeah, that's about all I can really tell you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
I should
piggybacking
look.
off that,
Uh-huh.
because the Spanish language is so gendered. Like for me, I am 115% on board with this transition, because what happens to those people that don't see that are Latinx, like, but don't see themselves as a Latino or a Latina? Like, what happens to those people? And I think it's really shining light on those people and trying to like be inclusive, because in the Hispanic culture and the language, it's very binary. There's like no gray area or like no purple area, like Danny is saying, like blue and pink. There's no purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is one step closer to like trying to mix those hues together.
I think what, okay, going off of what the ladies are saying, like, I think the reason why it's getting lots of media attention right now is because it's like, and I felt these, and I spoke to Carson about this, like, when she asked me to do this talk, is like, I'm a Spanish minor. I love the language. This is like, I've hated English like my whole life. It's like
Stephanie's like,
I
yeah.
was studying it. Like, I don't know how to put a sentence together like in English. I'm sorry. But in Spanish, it's a beautiful language just to study, like as a from a linguistic standpoint, and from like
Oh,
a
yeah.
literary standpoint, and it's just like,
Oh, yeah.
yes, it's so good. But then when I was like, ooh, like Latinx, like I can be inclusive while I do this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to change like thousands of years worth of language. And like, it's not just like, okay, push this button, it'll work. It's like it's receiving a lot of like media attention. It's just like you're changing a very, very, very old thing. You know, it's based in
Yes.
Latin. Like
Yeah.
Latin's mother of
Yeah.
languages. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm doing hand motions in the air. It's a big change, and change always makes people nervous.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
going back to ignorance. I think
Right.
people are ignorant because change makes you feel weird on the inside. So it's just like I obviously am for like this movement, but it's definitely like ooh, like it's really interesting. Like we're a lot is gonna have to change.
Yeah.
So,
Just
sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Like, we all start talking.
Yeah, I got really fired up. I was like, yeah.
yeah, from I guess. So I am white.
Identify as white.
Put that out there.
Katie, Steph, and I aren't.
but
just,
my,
like, in case like
Yeah, so
Most of us in here are
listeners,
Hispanic.
Yeah, most of us are.
My wonderful
4 out of 5.
friends here are all Hispanic, and I am not, but I am a Spanish major, so I have an understanding of a linguistic study of Spanish, which for our listeners, and what I wanted to bring up, when they say that Spanish is a gendered language, it means it is either O as in masculine or A as in feminine, and if you're neutral, then you become masculine. There is no in between. And so when the whole concept of Latinx to be inclusive is what's the word? It's just so it's ingenious, but it's also so impactful, because an entire language
Controversial is a
yeah,
good word.
Yeah, controversial.
Like-
It's so controversial because an entire language is so genderfied, or so it follows the gender binary, and it has for hundreds of thousands of years, that it's controversial. So it makes a huge impact.
So I'm just gonna let y'all know, I'm probably the only one who's kind of against this. So
That's all right.
No, I was actually gonna, when we all started talking at once, I was
Yeah.
gonna say also that I wasn't like super excited, like partying it up when I heard about this. And I'm gonna let you talk first. Maybe we have some things in common. Like I've definitely transitioned between my thoughts when I first started to learn about this versus now. But I'm gonna let you talk first, and maybe
we can piggyback off each
yeah,
other.
yeah.
Tag team. Or I don't know. Like, do you want to like ask some questions, Carson? Then we can go off of that.
I mean,
or do you just want me to say
will
the reason?
ask questions, but it's okay if you just want to give a general premise of why you don't think it's whatever beneficial or necessary, whatever. I mean, go ahead and say that right now, and then we will dig into that.
Okay.
So that's okay. Yeah.
So, as like all of you guys said, I am also very like proud of my like Spanish. I really love Spanish. Trust me, I sound way more intelligent in Spanish than I do in English.
Back to this intelligent thing.
No, like
You said
She
I
is
mean,
really intelligent.
I know I'm intelligent, but like
More intelligent.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
sound more intelligent in Spanish. So
It's a beautiful language.
It is. It's such a beautiful language.
Absolutely.
And so the problem that I have with LatinX is that it does not really follow the rules of Spanish. So like you're going to be throwing an X in there, which makes it really almost impossible to pronounce. Also, the thing that I thought a lot about is there kind of already is a term for someone who doesn't identify as Latino or Latina. It's Latin. So like you can say, oh, well, this person's Latin. And so I didn't really think there really is a necessity for this word to come up. Not that I'm saying that we don't need to be inclusive, which I totally think we should be inclusive. Another thing that I really, that really like messes with me, pushes my buttons, is the fact that like whenever we do say that a group of people, I mean, yeah, like there could be a 10 girls in here, and the moment that a man walks in, it's los. We use the man, the
Or
masculine,
ellos.
or ellos, as a
It was like a they.
Descriptor, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
as a descriptor.
Yeah.
As the Latin community, like we're not saying or we're not thinking that every one of those females are now male, or we're not saying that they're less or anything. It's just the way that we use to categorize it. Same way as if we're talking about like the sun's example I always use, so el sol, the sun. We're not saying that the sun is masculine or that it is male. We didn't fly up there to see like.
If it has a penis.
Yeah, I mean if
AJ's dying.
if we did, like, I mean, Ryan's gotta explain something.
Dang.
But like, that's just we're not saying that these things are masculine. We're not automatically thinking that because we categorize this as being the masculine term that we descriptor that we use. It is not. It does not connect in our brains that it is masculine.
That's a good segue into my next question, which is, so does LatinX only apply to that term? So you only say LatinX and you don't replace all the O's and A's with X, or you do? So like if I were to say, what's a sentence in Spanish? So the boy's shirt is red. Would I change all of the O's to X?
No. Yeah, it's like
Contextual.
no,
like,
yeah. Okay, so the way that I think about it, I guess I never really thought about it like from the linguistic point of view, because when I think of Latinx, that term, I'm talking about people. Like I'm not like trying to change like a chair's las sillas, like gender in that sense. And so no, I don't think we're like walking in here and like replacing all O's and A's with X. Like
if a group of guys walk in, I don't think we're gonna call them like Latinx's. Like
Right.
they're still
Well,
Latinos.
they're
they're still
Latinos.
Yeah.
guys.
But like, here's the thing though: if someone does identify as Latinx, what are we gonna use to talk about them? Like, I know in the English language we use they, them, to identify someone who is Latin. I mean, that is not Latin, sorry. That is
gender non-conforming.
That's gender non-conforming.
Okay.
So if we were to talk about someone who identifies with Latinx and want to speak of them in some other sentence, not just mentioning what their that's not race, it's ethnicity is, how would we do that? Like,
Well, I think
if we would say, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm answering your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's like the job for our linguistic experts. It's like, we've created languages. We create languages for movies and shows all the time. It's like, why not get some of the world's best minds on language to like work, who are are also like into gender studies and
and see like something that like I saw that I would see in the comments with a lot of the videos that I watched and like articles that I would read is that they would use E instead of an X because an E in Spanish would what's it called? It doesn't conform to female or masculine.
Yeah,
like whenever we're talking about something that does not have a gender that we do not
like Latine,
like Latina would make a lot more sense because like they were adding in a vowel instead of three consonants all together. Like it makes it kind of impossible for someone who does not have the background in English to pronounce this. And like there, we're trying to include a lot of people, but at the same time, we're excluding all these people and kind of like saying that all Latins should have some kind of knowledge in English, which of course all of them.
I like where you're coming from. Like you want to respect the language.
Yeah.
And make it phonetically like able to be spoken.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're still trying to be inclusive too.
Right.
So I have a question. Where did Latinx come from? Was it from the United States in like Southern California, where
I think it's definitely like not a Latin.
Yeah.
Well, not Latin like language Latin, like originality.
So, right.
from like a
he's
Spanish
right. Yeah.
English kind of descent.
So it started in 2004. It was an internet sensation, and then it started picking up steam 10 years later, in 2014. So here, I think. Honestly, most of the Latin or Hispanic people I've spoken to don't know anything about it, or if they do, they don't like it. And so I think they're coming from where Stephanie's kind of.
And I think the other issue
too
is like English is spoken worldwide, so it's just like if the roles were switched, like the Spanish was spoken worldwide, would we be trying to like English-size it? I don't know. If the
so you mean like would we be trying to impose?
Because the X is definitely not a Latin.
It's
not
Latin.
It exists in the alphabet, but it's just like it makes very different sounds phonetically.
Yeah.
Like X.
X is
Like
so is that how you pronounce that? Latin
Latinx.
Latinx.
Is that how,
Latin.
I guess I would never thought of how I would have said
it. It is very like
it's not
like English-ized. I'm making that a verb. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like movement, I guess.
Right.
Because English is not as. Is it gendered?
No.
No, it's not gendered.
No, it's not.
Weird to me. Okay.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. English is not a gendered language. I think it's just trying to get that inclusion into a language that is very much becoming one of the most spoken languages like in our country right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So how will this movement impact Spanish-speaking cultures? Like, are we expecting everyone to jump on board? So Spain, Mexico, Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, Dominican Republic, are we wanting them to all also speak like this?
Colonization proves one thing. It's like,
True.
yes.
I think it would depend on those respective countries,
cultures.
their own cultures, and how the queer community or LGBTQ community or those Latinx communities would want to be known as, or how they identify themselves in their own language, because even though Mexico, not Brazil,
I was like, sorry.
So that is kind of like a tricky thing too, because they're saying Latin, and Latin is including everyone that's in Latin America, which would include Brazil.
But
Even
Spanish comes as European,
yeah,
which is not Latin.
Exactly,
Right.
and that would be including.
Hispanic, right.
That would be
Latinx,
Hispanic. That would be Hispanic, because Hispanic is where the Spanish would colonize, and also the places that speak Spanish. Brazil does not speak Spanish, therefore it is not Hispanic.
They're not Hispanic.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's it's really confusing
It's
too
so
when I said
technical.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I pick up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the question one more time?
Dang.
So the question was, is that what we're wanting to do?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, like all
whole,
the
Right.
it'd be really difficult for you for
like-
that to actually happen because like
Agree.
even in like Latin countries or like Spanish speaking countries, Hispanic countries, there are a lot of different words that are used in different places. Like even within Mexico, because Mexico's a pretty large country.
Indeed.
Like I know my parents are from two different places. My mom's from up north from Durango. My dad's from kind of centralized. He's from Guanajuato. They use a different term to identify as like mosquito type thing. Like one uses moyote, the other one uses zancudo.
Oh, I've never heard of
So-
moyote before.
Yeah.
I've heard of both. Yeah.
Yeah. Like even Mexico, like for straws they use popote. In El Salvador they use, oh god, I just had the word and I lost it. They use
different word.
They use a different word. Yeah.
And
That's
just
the
like
point
looking at Spanish too, like coming from Spain, like Spain Spanish is a lot different than
Yeah,
Right.
like,
And the
Mexico
Dominican
Spanish,
Republic
Latin-
Spanish
yeah.
is very different
Yeah.
than Mexican Spanish.
Yeah.
And then and I get where you're coming from because it's like my parents are my mom's from like TJ, like underneath California. My dad's from like mainland Mexico, and
The mother.
and, and so it's just like the slangs are different and the dialects
Yeah.
are different, and it's like if all those variables exist just in one country. where-
Imagine like a combination of all of them that are Spanish
Yes, if we had a
speaking.
universal, like we could like make universify. I don't know what the word I'm trying to use. Like
We know what you mean. You
Yeah.
can say,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah,
say
I
a word that doesn't
understand.
exist. It's all right. This
Yeah, I
is not
got you.
a.
if we
this
could
is not
if we
an
could
English
find this
class.
universal way to like implement this, then
Uh-huh.
of course we'd do it. Like
Right.
why
Right.
why
Right.
why make something harder
Yeah, it's gonna be a
on
process
purpose?
though.
But like, and I think and that's the key thing. It has to be something that you implement very slowly and very gradually, and like, cause like, I think like financially, like okay, let's say like LatinX becomes a thing, like
Mhm.
putting that into textbooks. How many textbooks are we gonna have to replace?
Oh my
and like,
gosh.
Right.
and so it's gonna have to be something that.
Mhm. And I think that's where Stephanie's coming from is I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that it would be changing the language.
Yeah. Like
Well, I mean,
I understand
It
like
would be a different language.
I understand that languages evolve and all that, but they evolve like with words, like putting in new words. Of course,
like meme.
yeah, like meme. Like we wouldn't have had that. You tell someone
I thought it
who
was Spanish for a second.
they're like,
okay, okay. So like, let's say in an age where like cars didn't exist. Of course, the word automobile or carro wasn't gonna be used
In
back
the
then.
language.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's gonna have to evolve and have that word come into it. But the difference is when we're using the word carro or automobile, one, it's all phonetically correct. Two, it's not changing the entire language. And like, I don't know what the third one would be, but all I'm saying is like, yeah, words, languages do evolve, but they don't change
But I
completely.
think just to be devil's advocate.
Okay, no, go ahead,
I
please.
love arguing.
Please.
Not even argue, just disgusting.
Quotations.
No
we'll
quotations.
be sure to let you know
There were no quotations that time.
if Davey
Um,
does quotations.
I talk with my hands too.
Same.
But it's just like the car. When the car's invented, yes, we added that too. But it's like, gender non-conforming people have always existed, but they're just now getting that visibility,
Right.
and we're just now. And I'd rather cause some people like to be upset and make these people visible and recognized and validated than not. You know.
Sure.
And so, verbs are created all the time. So, like, if we're we're worried about how to conjugate something, like, we'll figure it out, like we always have. Like,
Yeah.
irregular verbs exist, like,
True.
irregular words exist, and
Too many.
and there's
of
so
them.
many fusions of like, like when you're clicking on a mouse, the word is not cliquear, it's hacer clic, and so like we'll figure it out, and
Yeah.
like, and so I don't think it's a matter of like we're disrupting this whole system. Like, things will change, and it'll be a more noticeable change than we've had in a long time. But I think I'd rather sweat a little and get these people recognized than not.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say that I fought for them to be recognized and validated in their language.
Yeah, and I'd be totally up for that. Again, if
Mhm.
if they would be able to like actually put a good linguistic behind it, because again, how are people who grew up with Spanish, just Spanish, not any English, not any other language, how are they supposed to pronounce this?
Well, how do they say it in their own countries, I guess, would be my response. Like, how do, and this is a little more, I guess, nuanced, because as being in the United States, we have, through the history of imperialization of Latin American countries or Spain, being extremely Roman Catholic, and trying to, I guess, get attention for those in those non-conforming communities in their own countries. How do those communities in their countries express themselves, whether safely or not safely, and whether or not, just because we have the privilege of being able to talk about things and being able to show light on different communities versus those own countries, whether or not it's safe in their own countries. So I guess depending on how they see it or how they could say it, would probably answer your question, but none of us are from this country, so we can't do that.
Right.
No, but like I said, there are other alternatives that could be used, and like a thing that I keep seeing within these articles that people keep saying, like, yes, we understand that this isn't a perfect solution, like this term isn't really perfect, but it's a step going forward. I'm like, yes, it is a step going forward, but if something isn't perfect, why are you trying to change an entire language to something that isn't perfect and then try to solve the problem later? Like,
well, maybe this Latinx movement is like the precursor to like the next movement, like Latin
Right.
movement. You know, it's just like, because
yeah, and I mean, I know there was already
humans aren't really good at getting things right the first
True.
time.
Yeah.
So like,
Very true.
yeah, and I mean, I know there was already a movement before that with the Latin, and then at the end they would put an at symbol because I had the A and the O.
Oh.
But then people stopped using it because how the heck are you supposed to pronounce that? Also, like whenever you try to type it in, lots of like Word or Google would try to
underline everything.
like, yeah, they'd be like, what's
That's
this?
an
What's going
error,
on? Yeah.
error.
They're like error. And so another thing that was brought up was that that term would then imply that there's only female or male. I don't understand how that would do that, but I guess that was something that they fought against. But again, like
Because
I
of the
said,
at symbol?
the at
Yeah,
symbol.
I mean, because you would still have
It
to pick between A or O.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
the A and the O kind of like
Yeah,
mixed together.
When they linked it.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
in terms of like why that was, I guess, quickly taken off is just because of all of those problems that were arising, the A and the O. Because it
as
was
inclusive, like as it was
yeah,
wanting
it
to
wasn't
be.
as inclusive. It was also in an online community where maybe the at symbol was more, I guess, accepted, but it wasn't as inclusive, and so it was. I think it started with the at symbol, and then it turned. I mean, and I could totally be wrong with this, and then it turned into a LatinX, and that was more inclusive, kept with, I guess, the normal, I guess, letters, could fit into Google, wouldn't, mess up any coding if there was any, and so that term was more, I guess, bandwagon on it, like, it's not perfect, but that's, the more perfect term that we can find that won't create a lot of problems, and that could be, and then, maybe 10 years from now, or hopefully 5 or even fewer, we'll have a new term that will,
then replace it. But again, sorry, the problem that I have with this is that it's being, sorry, I just like touched
You're
it.
good.
The problem that I have with this is that it's like spreading really quickly, and it's now being used in articles and lots of videos, so it's starting to be really really known and everything, and I'm like, I really am for inclusivity and all that, but I would like for someone to go up there and someone who actually knows linguistics of Spanish to go up and actually fight for a term that can actually be more used. Again, with the E, like, I find that to be a perfect alternative because, again, it doesn't really, it doesn't go with the norm of, like, female or male. And so, like, I freaking love my, sorry, I'm trying not to curse, so I'm going to use some.
You're doing great.
Thank you. I really love my Spanish language because I feel like that's where I can actually express myself. Example A. I can actually express myself a lot better. Yeah, sorry. My mind is constantly like trying to translate everything I'm trying to say
You're
from
good.
Spanish
Isn't
to
she doing
English.
great?
Thank you. So every once in a while I'll have a little pause and it'll be like translation.
I feel you.
And so like for me to see Latinx, to me is like kind of offensive to me because I'm just like, that's not really how the language goes for someone who's studied this language. And Danny, you've been in the classes that we've taken. They're pretty rough.
They're not easy.
They're not easy Spanish classes that I'm taking because I really do enjoy my my Spanish and I want to speak it as best as I can. And then just see someone who just wants a term thrown in there and for it to mess it all up, like that to me is like really disrespectful. Like
So
there's other ways that you can be inclusive while still being inclusive with people who actually speak the language and for people to actually be able to pronounce this.
Are these articles written by Latinx people or by Latinos or by
Latinx people who are promoting this? So
Yeah.
I've actually tried
So, like,
reading
both.
all over.
Yeah.
Like I've read places from this is just to mention some. Flama had a video that I saw. The Huffington Post, Refinery 29 or something like that, or 27. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong.
No,
Sorry, Refinery.
I just know it's Refinery 20 something.
The Refinery 20 something. And I think
BuzzFeed's starting to blow it up.
yeah,
a little bit.
BuzzFeed started to blow it up a little.
I don't know how
I saw
Uh,
BuzzFeeds, yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how credible they are all the time, but
Yeah.
True.
they're out there.
Yeah,
And
they-
I would also read from like them, like I would see their sources because they would use like university professors or other people who are Latinx or the Latinx community who identify as that. And I would try reading their stuff as well. And these are just like the things that I would see the most that would come up.
Another devil's advocate question.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Because
Please.
so and this may be a question, but what does it mean to be a Latino from Latin American countries or be descended and still retain that culture of being Latinx in the United States? Like in a lot of our southern states, they have huge Hispanic and Latinx communities just because of the immigration and the I one
Yes.
the I one
Immigration.
immigration into those states, so they have huge cultures revolving around those ethnicities, but they're not necessarily from those countries, but they still retain those identities. So how do you mix having those ethnicities and retaining that identity versus 100% naturalized persons of those countries?
Okay, so I myself am not from the motherland. I'm not.
I love that that's how we're referring to Mexico.
It is the motherland.
For you.
Yeah, for me. Yeah, I'm actually from Wichita, so I will often get a lot of people who are actually from Mexico who would be like, oh, well, you're not Latin enough or you're not Mexican enough. And I'm like, I'm just as Mexican as you are. Like, I got all the DNA to prove it.
Bang, bang.
So, like, I understand that, like, you know, some people who aren't, like, necessarily born in Latin American countries are seen down upon, but in all honesty, they shouldn't be seen down upon. They're all Latin.
I didn't necessarily mean in that terms. I mean
Okay.
more in terms of like being able to use the term Latinx and like being from the United States or like identifying as Latinx as an American or being in the United States versus being in Mexico or another Latin American country and only speaking Spanish and trying to use the Latinx term versus being in the United States.
Hannah's confused.
I'm following.
Okay, Danny, please clarify.
I think what you're.
Tag team.
I think what AJ is getting at. This is funny because like, I don't necessarily agree with Stephanie, but
That's okay.
it's like but I'm also like defending. It's like I'm like both sides here.
That's fine.
I think what you're addressing is like where are you from, isn't necessarily relevant in this context, like the specific question that you're asking. 'Cause I think it's like speaking the language doesn't. If you're speaking Spanish and you want to be gender inclusive, you should be able to use Latinx. That's basically what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it matters if you're in Spain speaking Spanish or in
Right.
like Chile speaking Spanish or in the States speaking Spanish. I think it's more of a matter of like
The movement, if you believe in it and you want to take that step
Exactly.
forward, it doesn't matter what you were born or where you're living. If you want to be an advocate and ally for that, then I don't think it should matter either.
Okay, I guess that's no. That was really good.
Was that okay? I
Yes,
don't know what I don't
that
know,
was
like,
good.
what
That
did I
was
do?
that was addressing my question, and here's why it was being confusing. I guess in terms of Spanglish, or like the mixture of Spanish and English, and how that's used more so in English-speaking majority of English-speaking countries by Spanish-speaking people, and how Latinx fits into that context.
Okay, so I see where you're going from. Like,
Linguistic.
okay, so you got me right there. Hold on.
Wait.
Just let me think for a
Yeah,
second. Like,
same.
okay.
Hold up.
So, like, I do understand what you mean, because, like, for example, like, a lot of people living in the U.S. or, like, really close to the border in Mexico will use the word carro, which is actually derived from the English word car, when the correct term is actually automobile.
Mhm.
And there's many examples of this where they actually do implement English words into Spanish, but
Click,
the thing
you know,
is,
online.
yeah, click. And the thing is, a lot of the times they are actually trying to make it pronounceable in Spanish. For example, we don't say car in Spanish; we say carro. Again, it is implementing from the English language, but we are still mixing it a little bit so that people who do not speak the English language can say it.
And I know something Steph and I learned in our Spanish class last year is the whole idea of code switching,
Yeah.
where I think a lot of quotation marks
Spanglish.
He's doing it. He's doing it.
is
Quotation.
coming from, because if at least speaking for myself, for the girls, like where we learned Spanish growing up and
Right.
it's our first language, like sometimes our Spanglish, more quotation marks, is more from like we're switching between translating from one language to the other so fast that we make up words like parquear, like to park your car is estacionarte,
Right.
but we say
Estacionar.
parquear because it's
O troca, it's like from truck, but it's supposed to be camioneta.
yeah. So like we're code switching so fast that it's like why do we go through this issue of having to stop, think English or Spanish, stop, pause, think, interpret, there you go, where we could just say like and then like whatever the word is and make it a fit of the both. And I agree, and what you're asking is really interesting to me because it's like LatinX and gender inclusive letters are going to be really interesting in terms of code switching.
Yeah.
Because we're already like I, it's just like 'cause we speak so fast. It's like
Yeah.
where it's like you're adding another variable into the mix, like a dash of that and like
Right.
more X or more E or whatever letter
Yeah.
we want to use.
Cars
Like
screeching and burning.
like it's like our
Seriously.
brains are just and
I mean, it'll be like a readjustment for sure,
Yeah.
but I guess I never thought of that until now. Like, what is that gonna look like when I'm like having a conversation and like translating back and forth in my brain?
So, do you guys? I think like, because
It's like-
Stephanie and I have
it's
talked about
like-
this a lot.
Yeah.
Just in terms of asking each other questions, and because we've both been learning about this recently, and so I think what comes up a lot is that what Stephanie mentioned in the beginning, El Sol does not mean the boy's son, but sometimes in English, when somebody hears El Sol, they think that that's what it means. So I think where Stephanie's coming from is that gender in English and gender in Spanish are two separate meanings. It's the same word, but they mean different things.
Well, I think the other thing too that is important to note, that's a good word, is like language is influenced by culture, not just their own culture, but what's going on around them. And like the first thing when Steph said El Sol, the first thing I thought of was like in like some Asian cultures, like sun is masculine, night is feminine, and so it's just like little things like literary and like artistic and cultural things like that. Like go everywhere. I smashed my hands together and they went apart. Like they go everywhere, and so then other cultures, like Hispanic cultures, will pick up on these things and will like, and I don't know if this is how it happened, but like Japanese culture uses masculine sun, so let's do that. I don't know, but the thing is, we see these trends in multiple languages. So I think it's maybe like the sun was seen as a masculine thing, maybe in our society now, in our generation, if the sun is a burning ball of gas in outer space, but like.
So you think that it's like an adaptation that Spanish is gendered?
Well, I guess
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Okay. I understand.
Jumping into this, like even in languages before Latin, where I guess during the not polygamy, but with pantheons where you have a lot of deities to
Mhm.
represent
Mhm.
nature, to
Yeah.
basically give the
Polytheism.
yes, thank you,
Mhm.
polytheism. That's
Polytheism.
yes.
Yeah, we know what you mean. We know what you mean.
Alright.
Yeah.
Yes. Before Rome was even, before Greece, before a lot of modern civilizations, they would have deities for the sun, for the moon, and they would pair them together because, in terms of like man and woman being paired together, the sun and the moon, and the sun and I mean, I can't speak to why they chose the sun to be masculine or why they chose the moon to be feminine, but it goes from there. And so like throughout, I guess, human history and having deities, they've usually been paired masculine and feminine, and then it kind of has spread down through the linguistic tree throughout, like through throughout Greek, Latin, and then into all of these subsidiary languages. And that's a lot of reasons why we have like in terms of like gendered languages, why the sun is masculine or why the moon is feminine.
Which is why it's important to recognize that gender is a social construct that has been here forever. And
Right, and this might be like backing Stephanie up, but in my mind, when I say el sol, I'm not thinking like gender, like it's just
Mhm.
the sun.
see, but I do, because
Period.
el is a masculine.
See, but
The.
I guess it's gonna be one of those things where if you ask someone, it's gonna be different because it's happening right now. Like
Because-
for you, that
because
makes
if you
sense,
didn't
but for me,
think-
it's not. Like
Like,
I
that's the way I
just
think about it, is like, if I didn't think about gender, if someone said la sol, that would sound so wrong to me, because like, no, it's a
Mhm.
masculine noun. So
right.
Yeah.
it's like,
But,
I
like-
think
But, like-
subconscious, I think we do acknowledge it. Like,
Right, but like I think that's more rule based, like grammatically,
Mhm.
that it like
Yeah,
triggers something
yeah,
in
yeah.
your mind,
Yeah.
rather than like, oh my gosh, the sun
Yeah.
is a male. Like we need to
Yeah.
address that. you
Yeah,
know?
and, like-
it's more grammatically that
We have the
it
same
triggers
rules
me
like that
too.
in English too.
Yeah.
Where like you
Right.
don't use generally you don't use they to describe one person.
Mhm.
This English it's just grammar.
Mhm.
In
Yeah.
English. Is that what you're kind of getting at, Haiti?
yeah.
That's exactly what I'm trying
Yeah,
to say.
because like, even being literal, or even sometimes even now, because like, yeah, even though I do study Spanish as much as I can, even though it is my primary language, I will still mess up. There are times where I identify something as like the wrong the. Sometimes I'll use la something, and it's actually supposed to be el something. And in my brain, it doesn't sound wrong. It's not that I'm saying like,
Like water. How do you say? Is it la agua or el agua?
el agua is usually what I use.
Yeah,
or
it's
la.
L.
And
Is it
yeah.
L?
Can't confirm.
Yeah,
it's
that's
L.
what- that's what I've
I
read.
choose those I use those interchangeably. Like
kind of look at.
Yeah,
this up.
Yeah, look it up. Feel free.
See, like,
I just like to discuss.
and see, like, if it really was about the gender, we'd just be like, oh, well, let me see if the water has a,
A penis.
yeah.
Penis
But-
does not
Back to
mean
that.
male, though.
But
Like,
but see, like, in this case, we're just using the term to identify it as
Wait
what
a
we're going to be
minute.
using. Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Stephanie.
Okay.
Okay. So then what's okay. Wait a
Okay.
minute. Because I just said if it has a penis, because that's where Stephanie was going, and then Danny jumped in and said, but that doesn't mean it's a male. So then
'cause sex and gender. are
right, they're
two
not the
separate
same.
things.
I understand.
Mhm.
So then so now I'm missing where the problem is.
I am following you
I'm
now.
not.
I am
Katie,
I
we're
figured
on
out-
the
okay,
same.
so okay.
I figured
I'm
out
gonna
why
see.
agua
I'm gonna
is
see if
masculine.
if
It is
If
masculine?
it's
okay.
actually
it's what?
Well, you say el agua, but it's a feminine. Like you would describe it with feminine adjectives.
Okay.
so there's some
For
examples.
Okay.
for like
Okay.
for like phonetic
Phonetic.
linguistic reasons.
Okay. So where
It's feminine. Like
Haiti and I think just clicked
Okay.
is that so Stephanie was describing how just what we've been saying is that like when you think of the sun in Spanish, el sol, and then she said agua instead, and she's like when I'm thinking of el agua, I'm not looking for a penis in there, not to see if it's really masculine.
Right.
And then Danny said, well, penis doesn't define masculinity. And now the record just stopped in my head because I'm thinking, well, then what's the problem?
Right.
If it's all relative,
Yeah.
what's the problem of it being
I am
feminine and
wrong.
Yeah, that's
masculine?
what
Okay, are you following Haiti? Okay,
yeah.
Haiti's fine.
Okay, Danny's jumping in the chair.
I almost
Okay,
went-
okay,
I almost
cool.
hit Haiti.
Oh God.
Okay.
It's okay. I almost said there was one rule and it was no cussing, and Danny's already broken that. May as well punch someone in the face. No. Go ahead, Danny. Go ahead.
Now I need to collect myself.
Go ahead, Danny.
I feel like I made a big deal. Now I need to back myself up. So when I said,
Jay.
he's like drying. When I said that like penis is not equal masculine, what I'm saying is, yes, we generally as a society say if you have a penis, it's a masculine thing. But
Right.
there are associations. Like, you know, when you look at a flower, that does not have any like genitalia. I mean,
Mhm.
plants have their organs,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
They do have male and female organs.
but like,
Some of them have both.
if I gave you a rose,
Mhm.
you know, if I held a rose, would you see that as a masculine or feminine thing?
Neither.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or, but,
Right.
well, I would see it more as a feminine thing, like flowers, girls, like pretty, like,
Rose love.
Okay.
Mhm.
But that's just what we mentioned was
Mhm.
that. So you think that, but I don't think that. And if
Exactly.
we're gonna change
Yeah.
a language
But
based off
that's
of what
the
you
thing.
think,
Exactly.
Yeah.
but why are we not
Whoa.
changing it because of what you think, though?
because what? No,
Yeah,
like
that's-
Like,
Just
why
what we're
are we
changing.
not changing it because of what you think? Like, why, like, you asked, why are we changing it because of what you think? Like, why would we not change it because
Because of
you
what my thoughts are. Exactly. So, yeah.
Well, like, then
Okay, I think I'm following.
Let's use
Yeah.
a term that actually like has no connotation to it. So let's say I gave you some grass. Would you then see it as a female?
But grass is outdoors. Men are outdoors. Women are indoors. You know,
Yeah, I
it's
don't
just-
make
Yeah,
that
yeah,
connection.
actually,
I
because-
don't make
because
that
again-
but
connection.
like
all.
socially and like context. Look at like Mexican culture. What do the men do? Go outside to work. Women
Yeah,
stay
but
inside
then
to cook.
but
and
like
clean,
my
Mother
brain
Nature,
doesn't do
like
that.
for some people, like
But-
Mother Nature, they
What'd
see
you
it as
say,
a
Hayden?
feminine thing.
Yeah, like my brain, I guess, just doesn't think like that. Like when I
Yeah,
think of
because
grass,
it
that's
doesn't
literally being
Because
separate.
it's socially
Yeah.
ingrained. That's what we're saying. It's from the social constructs. It's so ingrained socially into your brains that
to not look at it. To not like,
that
you know,
it doesn't have to have a gender, but it does because it is related to certain activities done by a majority of either males
like
or
being able to
females.
step outside and look at it for what it is. Like, oh, it's just grass, but it's not because because it's different now. It is different now because
Uh-huh.
women are
Uh-huh.
being
Since
boss
women
ass.
had
Right,
to enter the
but-
workforce.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
and you know, but it's just like, but our parents' time,
Uh-huh.
like, baby boomers' time, is just like, you know, women didn't get into the workforce here in the States until all the guys are out in war fighting, so then they
Right.
needed someone to do it. But before then, like, women
Wasn't
were
a thing.
stay-at-home
Yeah.
moms. They did the
But
maternal.
they did gardening and stuff, which grass.
Flowers. Flowers. Gardening for flowers.
Well,
Not necessarily grass. Grass is landscaping.
Hmm. But see, like, here's the thing: you can debate both sides because you just
And you
said.
can't. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yes. See, here's the thing, though. Like,
I think we're going very different routes of arriving to
yeah,
the same
so,
conclusion.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely are.
I agree.
It seems to be like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's just like how you look at. And
Right.
again,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
like my knowledge of gender. Like it's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm currently I'm doing a research project right now where we're looking at gender roles and stuff. And so, in the way you look at gender, it may not be to that specific narrow way of looking. You might be seeing it from a completely different socially,
Right.
you know.
Mhm.
And so it's just like your mind doesn't go there, but my mind does. I'm sure I'm not the. I mean,
Yeah, my
Yeah.
mind.
I'm
yeah.
sure I'm not the only one who thinks this way.
It,
It might
like
be.
when I
but-
was first learning Spanish, that's something that I, like, coming from English, that was something that I kind of had an internal struggle with about, like, why is all this masculine? Why is this feminine? Why does it matter? And just having to change from using the, which is gender, like, the doesn't have, it's not feminine, it's not masculine,
Mhm.
it's the, and so being able, like, going from nothing to being either masculine or feminine, that like I can like, even though I'm not a native Spanish speaker, I consider the genderization of certain terms weird, but that's like I can see the gender of those terms, and so
Yeah.
that's why it means something
Uh-huh.
to me.
Do I make
so
sense?
as
though?
a like,
No, yeah. Can I ask
So, yeah.
Danny a question just
Yes.
to pick at your brain?
Please.
Okay, so you like we talked about flowers, grass, and the gender behind that. If I say la silla, chair,
Who has to sit in chairs and sew?
both.
but,
So okay. Yes, the correct answer
you have to
is
sit in
both.
chairs to eat. Everyone.
Right.
Everyone.
But you okay? So The correct answer is both. Everyone has to sit in chairs.
Mhm.
However, who has spent again, this is going into like gender stereotypes. Who stereotypically has to sit down more? Women, because they're weaker or they're doing so. No, like I
men
said,
are always
That
sitting.
sounds like something that's coming from you, not the language.
No, but if you look at, think of culture. Catholic Church, the
Mhm.
priest, who is always a man,
Mhm.
is always standing. Everyone else is sitting. So,
He's
Including
I
the
think
men
they
in the
like.
congregation.
so
Hey, okay,
and this is
but-
also a hard talk to have because it's two dudes talking to three girls.
Okay, so if we put it like this, so a native Spanish speaker and a native English speaker are sitting down having a conversation, which is kind of everyone in
like
this room.
AJ and I
Yes,
are. Like,
yes.
Right. Because I'm not a native Spanish speaker, Stephanie is.
I
So
am.
if Stephanie and I sat down and talked about gender in the Spanish language, and I said, so like what Danny said, so why can't we change it just because of what you think? So that'd be like me saying, or Stephanie saying, there's no problem with it. There's no problem with the Spanish language. Why do we have to change that? And then I would be saying, well, why can't we change that because of how I see it?
See, and I'm gonna bounce off of that because, like, sorry.
No, you're
Oh,
good.
yeah,
I
Okay,
just, like,
so something that you guys were mentioning is that, like, for you, it is for you, AJ, it is such, like, it's kind of controversial for you to be thinking, like, why do I have to name this thing as being female or male? But see, here's the thing. For someone who just knows Spanish, does not have the English in it, it's not something weird to them.
No,
It's
yeah.
not something new. It's not something that they're really thinking that this has to be female or male. Okay, Danny.
Wait, no, we can let Steph
Finish, yeah. I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
okay,
finish, and then I-
Okay, so
Sorry.
like, and that's what like kind of bothers me, that I'm just like, again, this is going back to the people who speak Spanish and do not have any English knowledge. Like, for them, this isn't for them, there is no that is just what's it called,
Gender neutral.
Gender neutral.
Yeah.
So for them, gender neutral is usually using the male or an e at the end of something. And so it just doesn't go through their heads that, like, when we're talking about it, so that it is just masculine. Because for us, it really is just the word the. El or la is just
Yeah.
the word the, because you can't debate for someone to be saying, like, oh, well, there should be a the without any, like, gender to it. Because, like, they don't know what that is, because this is their language. They don't have the
So,
English background to them, so it's not
I think maybe
different
that goes
or
back to
weird.
Danny and AJ saying, like,
And
it's
so-
built in, so, like,
Right.
that's why
Yeah,
they don't
and so,
notice
like,
it.
when you use the word Latinx, like, to me, that's someone who knows the English language, because obviously they're able to pronounce this,
Yeah.
and they're able to
Mhm.
throw this in there.
Uh.
And they didn't think about throwing something like an E in there, or just using the word Latin.
Yeah.
And so,
And that's where it comes from, the Spanglish or the code switching. Like,
uh-huh.
being able to, and especially since, well, I can't really say this, but, or I can say it, but I don't know the validity of, like, gender studies, and, like, being able to see gender past our social constructs, and past the stereotypes, and being able to, I guess, verbalize and even, like, apply gender studies to linguistics. So, like, while I mean, I can't think of a good English example. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of English examples where it actually has a genderized connotation. I just don't know about it. And so, like, when looking at Spanish, while yes, it may seem like the or their or them, like a K or like a words are hard.
So, yeah.
But like, so looking at a gender studies, or being able to see gender through and around the social constructs, I guess for me, and I don't know about Danny, like, I can see how gender has influenced our language into assuming, like, this is neutral, but it has, like, using the masculine form, like the fact that there is a masculine form versus a feminine form, even though they mean the same thing.
And so I think two things I want to address is, like, see, the big reason why I disagree with you, Steph, is because you're making these great assumptions of, like, people who are native Spanish speakers see it this way. I'm a native Spanish speaker, and I don't see it like you at all.
Mm-hmm.
So-
The thing is, you actually have the knowledge of the English. So,
And
like, if I
so-
were to talk to someone like my grandma and try to like who doesn't have any English background, like the most she can say is thank you and hi, and sometimes she gets those mixed up.
That's like adorable.
She is adorable.
She's
She's an
adorable.
adorable woman.
She's adorable. Like for someone to try to explain that in the English language there is no the for like female or male, it'd be kind of like it'd take a minute for her to understand that and understand that there is no separation between the two.
Right.
Like it took me a long time too, because going into kindergarten all I knew was Spanish. So like having to know that just the is just the for
Like
everything.
overall.
And
It was kind of
and here's my thing, and it's kind of just like to go
Uh-huh.
back to like why we even started talking about this in the first place.
okay.
The whole reason why LatinX is even being brought up is for people who are trans, umbrella term trans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so it's upsetting. Oh, how am I say this? What am I trying to say?
It's okay. You can just
It's okay.
say
You can
it.
just say it.
No, well, I don't know what. Like,
Oh,
what
no.
words-
Got
I'm
it.
like, what words am I trying to use? This isn't being used. I think this movement isn't being brought up to upset people who speak the language. I think
Mhm.
it's being brought up to validate a large group of people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
because regardless of anything, it's like, I have trans friends who have talked to me. Having the wrong pronouns used against you, or
Mhm.
not against, just used at you,
Like to
or
describe you.
to
Yeah.
describe you,
Yeah.
hurts a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see,
And so it's when people, so when your whole language has no way to identify you as a person, like,
Mhm.
what does that do to a person?
hmm And see, like, here's where I would argue there already is a term for a Latin person. Latin. Like, there already is the word Latin that does not signify female or male.
But what if there's
Is that in
like how do
Spanish
you-
though?
La-
Isn't that
it's
English?
Latin.
Latin.
But
Latin.
when we say Latin, aren't we talking about the language?
Well, you can say
I think 'cause-
Latin or a
well, but it
I
can
think it's one
also
of those like multi-definitional.
yeah,
Gotcha.
like
So
someone
Latin
can say
is
like
just
this
making
is
sure.
Latin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got
someone
But
can
I
be
think that's the thing is like
Yeah.
I think it's the I want to speak for like trans people. I'm sorry, but it's just I hate this. I don't like doing this. I don't know if I want to talk about this. It's like I think it's just getting that. Okay, as someone who is an ally, I'll go about it from this angle.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. I can use Latino to describe myself. I can use Latino to describe you.
Mhm.
I want something. I want the extra something at the end to describe my friends who are not.
okay.
And I'm willing to like put my name on that and to
yeah.
argue against you all day long.
Yeah,
like,
that's fine.
that.
She will also
Like-
argue.
No,
Yeah.
and it'll be beautiful.
Yeah,
but
it
like,
will. It is beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
but I think it's like, I want to have something to acknowledge my friends who are
Mhm.
trans or gender nonconforming
Yeah, see, and I
at the same level that we can
yeah.
find
Mm.
words to describe
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
it
see,
does.
like-
it does make sense.
Like I said, I'm totally an ally as well. I will do my best to try to label everyone the way they want to be labeled, use the right pronouns. The thing is, again, with the X.
I just hate the buts. Like, I want to do all this, but
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry,
Well,
sorry.
I mean, you're
Like-
allowed to have problems with
Okay,
it because
yeah,
it does in fact
but-
impact Stephanie as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
like, I will argue with someone all day long. The thing with me is, like, if I hear something that I'm just like, oh, okay, that changes my mind, I will actually change my mind, and I am willing to admit it. Like, I've done it so many times.
oh yeah.
I used to be, like, extremely pro-life, and then, like, me and Carson started talking, and I'd, like, oh, okay, I see.
life
I
change.
see.
She can. Well,
Yeah.
I'd like to read it. She's still pro-life.
I'm
just that-
not, I don't like using the word pro-life to describe myself, because, like,
So,
I'm not,
Anti-abortion. Is that better?
see, I'm not fully anti-abortion either.
Okay. Well then.
But that's the point.
She can
Yeah,
accept.
I can accept.
a
I can accept
different-
facts, but
yeah,
like
yeah.
if I still see a problem with it, I will debate it. Not to debate against you, not to be against you or anything like
Not
that.
debating
but
for the sake of debating, but
No,
debating
because
she has
I
a
want
real-
I want
Yeah.
the knowledge.
Only
I want
our-
to see what the other side is.
if only our
and
government functioned.
But see,
True.
again, I totally want to be able to use the right pronouns for everyone. Be able to have everyone be included. The problem with me is that it is excluding people by using the term by using the X. Again, there could be so many different solutions that could be added in there. With using the X, you're having 3 consonants together, which isn't something that you find in the Spanish language, and it is
For
not
the
pronounced.
native speakers.
Native speakers, yes. again, like, my thing is I'm going to be fighting for my grandma who cannot pronounce these things and who will later maybe be seen as someone who isn't wanting to be inclusive. And it's it's not that she's not trying to be inclusive. She just cannot pronounce this.
Yeah.
So, again, like, I would be totally for, I'd be totally for this if it was actually correct, like, in the Spanish language. Linguistically. Because we talked about how we want our older generation to be able to, be able to be inclusive and be knowledgeable about this. But if we make it physically impossible for them to do this, then how are we holding them to these expectations?
Yeah.
So, like, thank you. Mic dropped.
Haiti just signified dropping the mic.
Yeah.
Didn't symbolize whatever.
And Danny just picked it up.
that is my biggest problem with the X. It's just that it is not something that can be pronounced. It is excluding so many people, and like I said at the beginning, I am someone who tries to fight for everyone's rights, because there are so many rights that need to be fought for.
So can I say something just to make sure that I'm like following? So Stephanie, and correct me, obviously, I don't want to speak for you. Stephanie is fully supports the movement, like what the movement is trying to do, be inclusive, but not the
that way.
linguistic way that they're doing it by adding an X.
And therefore excluding other speakers.
Exactly.
Silencing.
So then Stephanie, would you would be okay then with it being an E instead?
I would be okay.
Even though that would still be changing the language.
That would still be changing the language, yes.
But it makes sense.
But
it makes more sense. Okay.
Sense.
For
Makes
Spanish.
sense.
Okay,
It
for
makes sense for
Spanish
Spanish language because the E has already been in the Spanish language. It signifies something that is not female or male.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from.
And I do it there's still my again, I want to be able to include everyone as much as I can. But if you make it physically impossible for others, I'm gonna fight for those others.
So
I'm gonna be.
Are you saying you saying la persona? You would say like le persona.
Le persona.
Because that's something you can actually pronounce.
So are you?
Instead of
the question I have for
persona.
Steph is is debating this over a letter worth silencing all these people?
Well, because here's the thing: if I don't debate about this letter, I'm silencing a whole nother half of people. So I don't want to silence anyone. I want everyone to be able to.
I don't think she's silencing anyone. I think she's just arguing.
Well, I think by keeping it the way it is, you're literally silencing.
But she didn't say she
but
wants to keep it the same way.
if you actually implement this, you're actually silencing a lot more people.
So
because in the Latin community, not everyone speaks English. So people who do not have this background will now have to
you can learn how to make a sound.
Can we?
You can learn.
That's extremely presumptuous.
Yeah.
Is it though?
Yes.
Well, because
it is.
Like you're saying that, is it really worth debating over just one letter?
Why can't you just
is
learn
Is it really worth it just debating keeping this X over the E? That's still debating over a letter.
Is it? So I guess
that's a good point.
Instead of worth debating over a letter, is it more okay to have this movement have been started and then move on to a more linguistically appropriate letter rather than not have the word at all and then eventually create this more linguistically termed word?
Well, it's because here's the thing: they're already implementing it so much that then what are we going to do? Are we going to have to go back and edit all those things? We're going to have to go back and reteach all of this? It's like teaching someone something and then going back and be like, oh no, that was all wrong, let me teach you again.
Well, I mean, I don't think they wanted to happen all at once.
Well, here's the thing. It's already been implemented in so many of these things. Like I said, Flama, Huffington Post, and Refinery are all now, whenever they're going to be using the word Latinos, instead of using Latinos, they're going to have to put the X. Because that's something that they said that they're going to inherit now.
Okay.
So if
American history has been almost the same. Like any imperialistic culture, all of their history books, like from the 50s, really don't necessarily apply just because of the continuing more history that's happened, but also more perspectives that have happened within those own time periods. And it said to the victor goes history. Well, history has changed, and we are learning so much, even from the 60s and from the Civil Rights Movement to the World War II to World War I. So yes, those are things that have happened 60 plus years ago, but we've changed and we've accepted the changes, and yeah, it can be really expensive, and yeah, it's been implemented for a little bit, but we have the ability to change. And I'm sure if there was a more inclusive term that those I guess organizations or Huffington or whatever what have you would be like, oh, there's a more inclusive term, okay, well, I don't see why we need to keep using Latinx when this is, more phonetically, like, this is the popular term now to use.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing, like, what bothers me, sorry, like I said, I will change my mind once, like, all my things have been changed. If I'm still a little iffy about it, I don't want to keep that if, like, in me. I want to be able to have that be answered, and for me to be
questions.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah.
So
again, we're gonna go if this continues to implement as at the rate that it's going, and like one of the videos I saw from Flama, like I think it's called the cat call or something like that. They're basically like putting down people who were not accepting this term yet. Some people didn't even understand it, and they're just like, you gotta check your privilege, you gotta do this. But like, here's the thing, for those people who cannot pronounce it, it's not that
Check
they're
your
not
own
checking
privilege.
yeah, it's like, check your own privilege. I cannot pronounce this. So if we keep going at this rate, if we keep saying it, like, people are gonna like, of course I'm gonna be just like you guys are really strong for it and really want everyone to have this term. If someone is not using it, you might say like, hey, why aren't you using this?
Well, then,
and like, this person, like, even if they want to adopt this this word, they will not be able to pronounce it.
Well, and I think it's like, I don't think I'm not a linguist. I don't think whoever. Okay, let me say one thing first, because it's on my mind. I've had it on my mind.
Okay.
I am for Latinx now, than waiting for a solution later. Because I want to give people who are gender nonconforming and trans, like, their pronouns now. I don't want to wait. They've waited too long. Separate, semicolon, next paragraph. I think to resolve this, I mean, like, our conversation here and then the conversation that's being, in the world, is finding, like, and I just thought of like what's Rosa's last name?
Castañeda.
Yeah,
Castañeda.
like her PhD is in social linguistics.
Yeah.
It's like, why not like talk to her about like, well, how can we mediate this conversation and how can we find a resolution that'll get people their right pronouns now and also still like appease the linguistic component that you're fighting for.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I feel like this could lead to a really great collaboration.
Oh yeah.
a great dissertation.
So
Sure.
this is. I'm gonna stop us here, unless anybody would like to end with one more thing about Latinx. Anybody want to
I think that was a good
say
final
one more
note.
thing?
I love everyone here.
Okay.
Okay, well, I love you all to death.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for this conversation. It's been very enlightening. I know for myself, and I couldn't have gained this knowledge any other way. I don't think I think that students especially need this. I'm doing hand motions to everybody. I know we didn't get to everything we could have, and that's fine because I would love to do this again with all of these people, even if it's over the same thing, if they'd like. I did still have a lot of fun, and I hope that they did as well. Are there any last comments or questions we'd like to address or say before we sign out?
Definitely keep tuning into Coalition X. There's going to be like a lot. Sorry, I said X. I'm sorry.
Just kidding.
This X has been.
I know your mind's been on X. I understand.
But yeah, definitely keep tuning in. It's a really great program, and like, I do find the need for like people to be able to have a discussion without like degrading the other person, thinking that that's actually an argument when it's actually not.
I think everybody here did a great job with that.
Yeah.
You're an awesome person. You're an awesome person.
Thank
You're
you.
an awesome person.
Thanks.
The last thing I want to say is just like we did tonight, like, talk about these things. 'Cause, like, nothing will never get, whether you're fighting for the rights of like lab rats to not be killed in schools, like anything, just you need to talk about it or nothing will get done.
Yeah.
And then and once you start talking about it, come up with solutions. Like, we just brought up a professor here who could probably give us good insight on this.
Yeah.
Find these resolutions to these issues, because once you talk about them, if you talk about it for too long, nothing will get done. So it's just talking about them gets people in the right mindset, and then finding solutions. I think when you get innovative people like us in a room together, like, that's what needs to happen to get stuff done.
Yeah.
For sure. AJ and Haiti, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. At first, I was like starting to get really nervous because things kind of got heated
little
right
heated.
here. No, but I
That's
actually
great.
really I love it because if we weren't having this awkward, hard conversations, we can act as change agents. Like if we just keep it to
Mhm.
ourselves, like that's not how it happens. We have to be the catalyst, and maybe an argument or a civilized discussion between Danny and Stephanie is what is that catalyst.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
thank you for
epitome of a
having
great
us.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. AJ?
Being the only non-Hispanic or Latino person in the room, Latin person in the room, I think it's really important for, even if you don't necessarily know a lot about a certain issue, listen and then try
Ask
and learn as
questions.
much
Yeah.
as you possibly can so that you can become the next, I guess, generation in quotations of fighters for that
Yeah.
issue, so that it doesn't just the information doesn't just stop with you. Like, learn, lead, and listen.
Love.
Yeah. Love.
And love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cute. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you learned something. I hope you had as much fun as we did. This is Coalition M. I'm Carson. Good night.